Hey everyone, it's Colin. How's it going? The late 90s saw a lot of people interested in getting on the internet for the first time, but not everyone wanted to deal with the cost or complexity of a typical PC. This time, let's check out an internet appliance that promised to make it easy to surf the web, but ended up going nowhere. This is a 3Com Audrey. It was launched in October 2000 with hopes that it would attract customers who wanted a simple, inexpensive way of getting on this increasingly popular thing called the internet. Reportedly named after actress Audrey Hepburn, it was a device intended to be stylish enough to set up in a corner of one's kitchen, and its design certainly looked the part. Audrey features a 7.5-inch color LCD, a kickstand on the back to prop it up, and stereo speakers on top. The left side holds the power input socket and phone jacks for the built-in 56K modem. The right has a DE9 serial port connector, and the bottom hides a headphone jack and pair of USB ports. The keyboard is wireless and communicates with Audrey through an infrared window on the front. It feels really lightweight and somewhat cheap, but gets the job done. Chromed buttons serve as hotkeys for Audrey's various functions, and a rotary encoder front and center allows one to switch through several so-called channels. And that speaks to the overall experience of using this device. It isn't just an ordinary PC in a unique shape. It has a custom user interface and was meant to be easy and simple to use. Those channels were predefined and allowed one to get the latest news, sports, weather, and entertainment information without really even needing to know what the internet is. The contents could be updated on demand or set on a schedule so Audrey could retrieve new data multiple times a day. In fact, the unit was pretty much always turned on. There was no shutdown option anywhere in the interface, and pressing the power button on the front only put it into sleep mode. This allowed for those background updates to happen, but also had the benefit of being usable again almost instantly when waking it up. Convenient if one just needed to quickly check the calendar or grab a phone number for a contact. Those two functions were additional selling points for Audrey. It wasn't just a communications device, but also a personal organizer. There was an email client, and a neat feature it added was the ability to attach handwritten notes or brief voice memos to outgoing messages. The calendar allowed viewing events either by time or in simple list form, and the handwritten note option was available here too. Address book entries were also consolidated into one simple view, offering the ability to store email addresses, phone numbers, and web bookmarks. If owners wanted to broaden their horizons beyond the built-in channels, though, the web browser allowed surfing to any site. But with its lack of modern encryption support, these days there isn't a whole lot that one can still do. Other than the keyboard, interacting with Audrey is primarily done with a stylus, which fits into a dock on top when not in use. It makes the device look like it has some kind of antenna, which adds to its vaguely mid-century modern aesthetic, but also serves as an alert indicator for new email or upcoming appointments. Despite its simple appearance and interface, there were some advanced features just below the surface. Audrey supported connecting a printer through USB, though it had a somewhat limited list of compatible models. The serial port on the side was meant for connecting a Palm Pilot dock, and Audrey could sync with no configuration needed. Just drop the PDA in the cradle and press the button. Credit card information could also be stored for autofilling on e-commerce sites, in obvious recognition of the .com era. At its launch, reviews were generally positive. As a family communications hub, it worked well, and it was also ISP agnostic, so buyers weren't forced to sign up for any particular service. Audrey's styling set it apart. It was a sleek, purpose-built device that could fit into a common area of one's home and came in several colors. Its large user guide also did a good job explaining how to set up and use Audrey, with a sense of whimsy and non-patronizing language for those new to cyberspace. But in terms of actual sales, Audrey was a total flop for many reasons. Its screen was small, and the passive matrix LCD offered bad viewing angles, slow refresh rates, and poor backlight brightness. Ergonomically, it was a mess. With no mouse support, one had to use the stylus to navigate, and even when propped up, one felt like they had to hunch over to see the screen. Being compatible with a variety of ISPs was nice, but popular option America Online wasn't one of them. And if one was lucky enough to have broadband access, it took a specific USB adapter to gain an Ethernet port. 3Com firmware locked Audrey to just its own model and charged $60 US for the accessory. Palm Pilot synchronization was a neat feature, and it was possible to set up several calendars, but without proper support for multiple users, you were limited to just one email account and contact list. And the term limited describes the rest of the Audrey experience as well. It ran the QNX real-time operating system, and there were no provisions for adding additional programs or even basic productivity tools like word processing. The device was also somewhat slow, as it was powered by a National Semiconductor Geode processor running at 200 MHz and only had 32 megabytes of RAM. Audrey's real problems, though, came from its competition. Other internet appliances from the likes of Compaq and Gateway offered larger screens, more features, and better prices. While in general they had a similar retail price to Audrey's $500 US, on many occasions they could be bought at a steep discount if bundled with an internet service plan, something Audrey didn't offer. If one was buying an internet appliance, they likely didn't have an ISP plan already, so bundling everything together and saving money in the process was appealing. The other thing that was appealing was, well, just buying a real PC. The late 90s saw entry-level computers caught up in a race to the bottom, and by the time the internet appliances entered the scene, it was possible to spend that same $500 or so and get a machine that ran Windows. It wouldn't have yielded as smooth of an experience as Audrey offered, but the value proposition was far better. A PC simply didn't have any of these devices' limitations. And because of that, none of the all-in-one internet appliances survived. They dropped out of the market throughout 2001 and early 2002, sometimes just months after being announced. For most of the manufacturers, it was a disappointment but had no real impact. Gateway and Compaq, for example, made most of their money from PC sales anyway. But the demise of Audrey in June of 2001 was a much bigger problem for 3Com. Audrey had been the first device in a series of products called Ergo, after the Latin word meaning therefore. Previously, 3Com's main success in the consumer products market was its Palm PDA line, which it had picked up during its acquisition of US Robotics in 1997. But 2000 saw more reorganization within the company, including spinning off Palm and US Robotics in July of that year. 3Com had abandoned its high-end enterprise networking market in pursuit of consumer and small business products, and with more components being integrated into computer motherboards, its previously lucrative network card line saw a rapid decline in sales. Audrey's failure prompted 3Com to abandon the Ergo line entirely, along with its Curbango internet radio. Profits crumbled and losses increased, and news of layoffs sent investors running. A partnership with Chinese networking manufacturer Huawei in 2003 stabilized things somewhat, but 3Com had long been done with consumer products. The company was ultimately acquired by Hewlett-Packard in 2010. The Audrey units that were sold didn't necessarily all end up on the scrap heap of history, though. Software hackers curious about the platform quickly found a software exploit that allowed them to modify the system by leveraging the compact flash card slot hidden on the right side. In time, they were able to add new functionality like MP3 file playback and instant messaging clients. But in most cases, this was still a bit of a novelty. And even today, it's possible to find new in-box units for sale on sites like eBay. The dot-com boom and subsequent bust in the early 2000s certainly had its impact on the direction technology would take. And despite their failures, internet appliances like Audrey did end up leaving their mark on how we'd interact with the web. They signified it was no longer a place that just desktops and laptops could go, and in time, ended up in devices we could carry with us everywhere. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. You can follow me on social media at thisdoesnotcomp, and as always, thanks for watching.